Hey, what's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to another episode of the Dreamerspro Daily Recap, where we give you a recap of all of the hot topics that we covered that day. You can catch them in their long format and also catch it fully streaming for free on Apple Podcasts. As you guys know, the Olympics are underway, and we've been covering the USA men's basketball team, who have been victorious in their first two outings. Their last game that they won was against South Sudan, and they're still on their quest to win the Olympic gold. And with that, everyone is talking about their chances, how they think they're going to do, etc., etc. And one of the shows that has been talking about Team USA's chances, going into the tournament and the tournament, has been undisputed with Skip Bayless, Keyshawn Johnson, and Paul Pierce. They all believe, and I think the vast majority of us believe, that the U.S. are favored to win this thing. Some people feel like it's going to be close, and then you have like the Ric Buchers of the world, and you have other people out there who feel like it's going to be a total blowout. And one of those people is Keyshawn Johnson. Keyshawn Johnson obviously is on Undisputed, and he's had the mindset that, look, he doesn't believe that this thing is going to be close. He doesn't believe that any of these teams stack up to the United States. He understands that there are other teams out there that do have NBA players, but he said when you look at the overwhelming talent with the all NBA caliber players that the USA possesses, he doesn't feel it's going to be a close thing. And he just basically summarily dismisses all of the competition on its face. So yesterday, they were having this debate, and they invited on Ric Bucher, right, who's a basketball guy. Been at ESPN, he's been covering basketball for a long time. And they were basically talking about USA's chances. Now, if you know anything about Ric Bucher, the way he analyzes sports is a very pragmatic approach he takes. He's very analytical. He takes things step by step, which I enjoy, right? Because he breaks it down to the point where basically a person that, if you just barely follow the NBA, if you're a casual watcher, you can understand it at a deep level based on the way he explains things. So they were basically talking about the chances that they give USA moving forward. And Keyshawn was saying, I don't think the competition stands a chance. And as he's talking, you can see Ric Bucher begin to give him these faces like, bro, okay, I get that you feel that these other competitors, other countries like Germany, France, or whoever else, Canada, doesn't stand a chance against the USA. But could you give me some in-depth analysis? And can you at least acknowledge that the way you're viewing this thing going is based on the way the USA, these players play in the NBA, and is different in the way that they play in FIBA games and the international game. That is a totally different game. And Keyshawn refused to do this. And as Ric Bucher is listening to Keyshawn talk, you can see, and we probably want to show a still of how he was looking. You can see that Ric Bucher is beginning to get a little bit annoyed with Keyshawn's kind of watered down explanation of these Olympic games. So what we want to do now is want to play this exchange for you. I want you guys to listen to it carefully and pay attention to the countenance on Ric Bucher's face as they're having this back and forth. Take a listen to that there.
Yeah, the ugly American is very spooked right now. I'm very scared. I mean, USA is the
I sense sarcasm.
USA is a threat to themselves. Look, man, there's no team in international play that's going to beat the U.S. It may give you a quarter, and it'd be like, oh, they win a quarter. They may even win 2 quarters. But in the end, I feel they're going to still get boat races, many of the things that I said earlier. Yeah, Canada has a bunch of NBA players. That is true. Shea probably should have won the MVP. That's probably true. All of those things. Yes, Dylan Brooks can get under LeBron's skin and get 30 put on his head in a heartbeat by doing that. All that's true. I watched them play them opening night in Vegas. I watched it. I saw it with my own eyes. You told me, Skip, that Canada was like, well, we showed them enough, we're done. That's not true. They was out there really playing. Murray has been struggling.
Has he?
Okay, so it's not like all of a sudden he struggled just against the U.S. He's been struggling. In these games, he's just, maybe he needs Joker to play with him. I don't know, but I don't sense any give up, any letdown whatsoever when the Americans take the floor against any of these teams. Man, France just had a squeaker, okay? At first, France was right behind Canada. Now, all of a sudden, I guess the squeaker in Japan, they wind up dropping them down and raising Germany up where Canada is number 2 behind the U.S. to bring home the gold. But it's not number 2 like this, it's number 2 like that. There's a gap that's in between where the U.S. is on the 10th floor and Canada's on the 3rd floor. That's how big of a margin it is. And so I don't see where you get Germany based on having a few players, just a few players that play in the NBA and I'm not talking about superstar players. I know, Rick, you hate when I know it burns you up.
We keep doing that.
The truth
we keep
is
doing it, Keyshawn. We keep equating number of NBA players with how great a team is.
No, not a number of NBA players. The top NBA players. When you got the top NBA players going on one unit, regardless if they played in the games a year ago or the games 5 years ago or they play all summer long together, doesn't matter. These guys are the top of their field because they know what they're doing. That's just, there's no running from it. There's no hiding from it.
But Keyshawn, we've had great international teams that have ended up winning gold. Spain, as an example, that had good NBA players, but they didn't have great NBA players. Argentina, when they won, Manu Ginobili, a great player, but not like, at the time, not one of the greatest NBA players by any stretch. And yet Argentina was able to win gold. So this equating like what a player is in the NBA, and I believe, look, I understand why we think that way, because I think there was more of a comparative value in the past. But the NBA game has really changed so much that players can be great at the game in the NBA, and the international game is just a completely different game. It's like Anthony Edwards last summer in the World Cup. We look at Anthony Edwards, I know, one of your favorite players, tremendously talented player and a great, impactful NBA player. But as an international player last year, he wasn't anywhere close to that. And it's because the game is
They're playing this year.
The game is, but no. We're talking about the difference between the two games and how they're played and how we define greatness in them. And you can be great at the international game and not be as great as an NBA in the NBA. And that's why when we just take it and look at it and say, well, the guy has an NBA resume, that defines whether he's going to be great or not. It doesn't necessarily apply to the international game. Dennis Schroeder and Franz Wagner and Mo Wagner and Daniel Tice and the NBA play, it's not because they're NBA players that I think that Germany is a threat. It's because of the way they're able to play the international game collectively I think that they're a threat.
So you heard the back and forth exchange between these two gentlemen. What I want to do, because I'm not going to assume that the audience just knows this, I actually want to read some articles that basically explain the fundamental differences between NBA basketball and then the international game, the Olympics basketball. So I'm going to read from an article called AZ Central. And let me just get into this here. It goes, how are Olympic basketball rules different from the NBA rules? It's a different game. Team USA has 12 players, but the team is competing for gold medal in the 2024 Paris Olympics under international FIBA rules. The three noticeable differences between the NBA and international rules are the 3-second rule, basket interference, and the distance from the three-point line. Here's the breakdown of the differences between the NBA and international rules. Number one, the three-point line. It's 6.75 meters on the 6.60 on the baseline. In FIBA, and compared, it's 7.2 meters and 6.7 meters in the NBA. The 3-second rule. NBA players aren't allowed to stay in the 3-second area if a player is not actively guarding an opponent. In FIBA, players can stay in the lane as long as they want. Another one, basketball interference. In FIBA, players can knock or tip the ball off the rim once the ball hits the rim. That's not allowed in the NBA, which is called basket interference, obviously. Fouls. Players get 5 fouls in the Olympics, 6 in the NBA. Court dimensions, you can see it there. Quarters, 10 minutes for the Olympics, 12 minutes for the NBA. Timeouts, there are 5 timeouts in the Olympics. Yeah, 5 timeouts in the Olympics. 2 in the first half, 3 in the second, and teams can only use 2 timeouts in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. Teams have 7 timeouts in the NBA. Traveling. A player can catch the ball in the NBA and take a step before dribbling. In FIBA, unless the player pivots in place, they must put the ball on the floor before taking a step. The player can also take steps and dribble simultaneously. So that's what one article had to say there. There was another one that I want to read from here, which is from, what's this article from? Detroit, freerep.com. I want to get to the point where it talks about what's the difference between FIBA and NBA. Here are the list of the differences. It goes game clock. FIBA has 10-minute quarters. NBA has 12. Shot clock, get this. FIBA is 24 seconds and 14 seconds after an offensive rebound. NBA, 24 seconds. They mentioned the court side, the three-point shooting. Here's another thing. Timeouts. In the NBA, they have that. And then what's the other thing? Jump balls. In FIBA, loser of initial jump ball to start the game gets possession in the next jump ball situation, alternating between every jump ball chance. In the NBA, loser of the initial jump ball to start game gets possession to start the second and fourth quarter. Initial jump ball winner gets the third quarter possession. All jump ball situations are concluded by an actual throw ball by the referee between the two teams, individual fouls and all of that. And I think there was an article where I read where Dwayne Wade, so I want to read from this article here. It's poundingtherock.com, and I want to read this part here. It goes, first-time commentator Dwayne Wade pointed out the difference in fouls. In FIBA, players foul out after 5 fouls, and technical fouls are part of that count. NBA allows for 6 fouls plus technical fouls, and techs are counted separately. You might think that difference would make the NBA more physical, but I noticed that the refs don't call ticky-tack fouls that often aggravate the NBA players. Don't get me wrong, though. The international players still look astounded when they draw a whistle. Apparently, that is consistent at every level of the game. And then, of course, it talks about in all the FIBA rules and all of that. So those are the differences there. I thought that it was important that we shared that because I didn't want to assume that everyone knew the FIBA rules. Why? Because the FIBA games are not played. I mean, the NBA is not playing FIBA games every single year. It's not a regular occurrence, at least to the best of my knowledge. So I just felt that it was good to kind of share that knowledge with you guys. What are my thoughts on this? I think that I think the United States is most likely going to win it all. I would be surprised. Some people out there said they wouldn't. People like basketball, people like Tim Legler said that he wouldn't be surprised if Team USA loses in this competition. Some of the stronger teams, you talk about France, you talk about Canada. Canada is laden with NBA players. But you also got to bear in mind that if they're going to have the same challenges that the NBA guys are going to have adjusting to that international game, maybe some of those Canadian players may have the same. I don't know. I guess we have to wait and see. But thus far, it looks to me that the Team USA is most likely going to go on and win this competition. I guess we just have to wait and see. In terms of the back and forth between Ric Bucher and Keyshawn Johnson, Keyshawn is a football guy, he's an NFL guy. So I don't really expect great analysis from him when it comes to basketball. But it was just kind of funny to see Ric Bucher kind of looking at him like, bro, like there's more to it than what you're trying to make it seem. Every once in a while, we go back and talk about the dynasty, Chicago Bulls, Scottie Pippen, and all of that. The Bulls are by far the most interesting dynasty, probably in NBA history, right? Everybody loves those Bulls stories, behind-the-scenes stories. And when The Last Dance was dropped back in 2020 during the pandemic, it just basically took over the entire sports media world because everything was at a standstill due to COVID and all of that, and everybody was watching. And it was the most successful sports docuseries ever, right? Justifiably, because it was fantastic. All of us were glued to our TVs or laptops or whatever it was, all the way from episode 1 all the way to episode 10, which was absolutely amazing. But in the aftermath of that docuseries, it brought on a lot of drama. One of the biggest ones was the fallout between Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan. Of course, there's the Horace Grant aspect with him and Jordan on the plane, talking about Jordan told him not to serve him food and all of that. There was that drama there. But the big one was the fallout between Scottie and Michael Jordan. Scottie Pippen went on the Dan Le Batard show, and that's really where he kicked off the entire thing. And then ever since then, it's just kind of been this war between Scottie and Mike. Well, I don't want to say between Scottie and Michael because it's kind of been a one-way thing, because Michael Jordan hasn't responded to Scottie publicly, except for the one time where I think he said via Stephen A. Smith that the relationship is over, right? They burnt that bridge. Mutual friend, I guess, between the two of them, Charles Oakley, has also stated something, similar. So this morning, I was doing some research and I came across a pretty interesting audio on Twitter. And it was centered on some information that the director of The Last Dance revealed, where essentially he said that the NBA had to ban him for releasing a particular piece of what he had recorded, or a particular piece of footage that he wanted to put in The Last Dance, right? And the NBA stopped him from putting that in The Last Dance because they felt like it was a little bit too strong and too vile in terms of what was being said about Jerry Krause, right? The former general manager of the Chicago Bulls. And so what we would like to do is we'd like to actually play what the director had to say. Those comments was, obviously he was paraphrasing because he was talking about what Scottie Pippen said. It was actually some comments that was made by Scottie Pippen. So what we'd like to do now is like to play those comments for you. I want you guys to listen to what he had to say in its entirety, and then want to come back and react to his comments. Take a listen to him here.
The Krause family, by the way, obviously Jerry wasn't around to interview. And the harder we demonstrated that the team was on him, the more sympathy I thought that would garner for Krause. Because I thought that people would appreciate, okay, he's the one who put the pieces in place. This poor guy is kind of a fish out of water with these NBA alpha males. Look at how they're hazing him. And instead, people thought like, the filmmakers hate Jerry Krause and have made him the villain. That was not the intent. So that's my misstep. If you have a problem with how he was portrayed, that one, both hands up, that's on me. The one thing that the NBA pushed back on in the entirety of this process was a clip where Scottie, in the locker room, they were joking around with saying what they were going to do when they won the title. And Scottie, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically said, I'm going to stick a cattle prod up Jerry Krause's butt and give that guy a heart attack or something like that. And everybody laughed. And it wasn't like, oh my God, keep the cattle prods away from Scottie. He said it in the heat of the moment that we were like, you know what, I'm going to kill that guy. So I included that in our rough cuts because I wanted people to see what this guy was going through day in and day out. And that's the one thing that they made me take out in 3 or 4 years of doing this. It wasn't like Michael calling people a bitch or it wasn't that. It was that comment from Scottie to Jerry Krause in deference to the Krause family that, all right, we've done enough to show that this guy is the butt of all the jokes. So,
as it were.
And so I followed poor Dion Kokoros, who is a producer still for the NBA. I followed him to Grand Central and went to the platform of his train as he was getting on to plead my case of why I wanted to do this. It wasn't out of cruelty, it was out of respect. And he didn't see it that way, and they made me take it out. So yeah, the Krause family, especially with what happened to his wife earlier this year, and all this popped up again to remind listeners, she was booed when they had an anniversary night for the Bulls back in January.
Exactly.
Right.
NBA Executive of the Year, represented by his wife Thelma, Basketball Hall of Famer.
And Thelma Krause, when they spotlit her and said his name, a lot of the crowd at the United Center booed.
They had watched The Last Dance.
I felt terrible about that, honestly. Like, I don't feel responsible or guilty, but a part of me is like, if we never did this, then this poor woman wouldn't have gone through what I'm sure was one of the worst moments of her life.
So you heard what the director, Jason, had to say there. What are my thoughts? First of all, I was even unaware of what he was talking about. I had to go Google what that thing was. So when I saw it and I realized the use that it's used for with cattle, I was like, damn, that's pretty crazy. And to consider that he ultimately passed away, and then the news surrounding his wife, I think it was an astute decision by the NBA to not include it. Now, if you heard what he had to say, the director Jason had to say there, he said his intent was to basically show the harsh treatment Jerry Krause was receiving from the players, and he wanted to exhibit that. But ultimately, that's not how it would come off. It would come off making him look pretty bad, right? I think during the I think they had a reunion at the Chicago Bulls had a reunion, and some of the players were there. Michael Jordan wasn't in attendance, and Jerry Krause's wife came out, and they were booing her husband, and the woman burst into tears. That was absolutely disgusting because she's a widow. She's a widow. So for them to do that 20, 30 years, whatever it is later, that was very disgusting on the part of the Chicago Bulls fans. Like it was horrible. So maybe it was a bit prophetic on the NBA's part by basically preemptively going out there and saying, no, this is not going to be in it. Because seeing how his wife was received, you know, if you now think about that audio being, or that footage being inserted into the film, I think it would have been worse, right? I think it would have been worse. So I think the NBA was right to not include it. But as I was watching the docuseries, like the rest of you guys, I was really surprised at how they were treating Jerry Krause. Now, obviously, the way NBA teams were ran back then is totally different from now. There was a real separation between the players and the management, not like what we have today. Like back then, especially with the Chicago Bulls, they truly believed that championship teams are built by the organization. And Michael Jordan and the other players fundamentally believed that no, the players are the ones that create a championship team or deliver championships, because we're the ones that are going out here playing on the court, plus we're the ones establishing the culture within the locker room and all of those different things, right? I guess the way I view it, and I would assume the way a lot of you view it, is that it's a collaborative process, right? You can have fantastic, great players, but if you have poor leadership, things won't work out properly. Just look at the Clippers with under Donald Sterling. Like, they had great players, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, all of these guys. I think JJ Redick was there, all of these guys, but for whatever reason, they couldn't make it happen because leadership didn't have their wherewithal, and it was a total mess there. So I believe it's a collaborative process. You need smart leadership, and you also need smart players. And I think the golden example of that is the modern day dynasty that we currently have in the NBA and the Golden State Warriors. They are the perfect example of this. They're the perfect example. They're arguably the best run organization, not only in the entire NBA, and probably one of the best run organizations in all of sports. They are the most valuable sports franchise, overtaking the New York Knicks, overtaking the Los Angeles Lakers. And they have shown that they have the smarts to draft players, build a good culture, and do whatever it takes to continue to win championship and retain some of their great players. Right. And they did this for a very long time. So I think it's a collaborative process. In the case of the Chicago Bulls, it was a different time, different era. And you saw the end when the reason they called it the last dance, when Jerry Krause told him, no matter what happens at the end of this season, this is going to be your last season, speaking to Phil Jackson. So it was a very contentious situation there that they had going on. And then, of course, Michael Jordan followed him out. He said, if you're going to fire my coach, and I'm not going to be here. And he basically retired and all that. So there was a lot of drama surrounding that. Folks, today we have some serious drama. But before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. As you guys know, the Olympics is currently underway, and whenever the Olympics come around, there's going to be a range of different sports that are taking place. Various countries around the world competing for gold medals, silver medals, and bronze medals, right? Exciting period for people that follow sports. But yesterday, there was some serious controversy that ensued. And it was during a female boxing match between Angela Carini, who's an Italian, And of course, the other fighter was Imane Khalif. I hope I pronounced her name properly. Right now, before we even get into that, let me just quickly read who is Imane Khalif, the Algerian Olympic boxer who failed an gender eligibility test. Right. I just want to quickly read a little bit of this from the independent.co.uk. Imane Khalif is scheduled to fight at the Paris Olympics on Saturday, 2 days after a controversial boxing match with Angela Carini. On Thursday, Italy's Carini quit just 46 seconds into her round of 16 bout with Khalif after the Algerian landed one significant punch. Last year, Khalif was disqualified from the Women's World Championship in New Delhi for failing a gender eligibility test. At the same tournament, Taiwan Lin Yu Ting was also disqualified for failing to meet the gender eligibility criteria of the International Boxing Association. Lin due to compete on on August the 2nd. So that's just a quick preview or background rather of who she is. So what happened this morning? I was going through the internet and I came across an audio from Nightcap featuring Shannon Sharpe. And Shannon Sharpe was actually discussing this issue. Now, if you know anything about Shannon Sharpe, he's a former NFL Hall of Famer, so he's an athlete as well. So he can understand things at a much deeper level than most of us watching this content, because he played at a professional elite level. So he has a different viewpoint. So when I clicked on his show to hear what he had to say, I got to say, I was very, very surprised at the level of passion that he was speaking with. But also, I was surprised at how much conviction he was showing in this particular position. Now, I don't want to spoil it for you. So what we would like to do now is we'd like to play exactly what Shannon Sharpe had to say about this global Olympic controversy. And then we're going to come back and give you guys our thoughts on the situation. Take a listen to Shannon Sharpe here.
Won her first match of the Paris 2024 Olympics when her opponent, Angela Carini of Italy, quit after taking several blows to the face in the opening round of the bout. The victory was fueled misguided controversy around Khalif, who's been targeted by critics and has been misgendered her throughout the games. Khalif's participation in the women's boxing has been scrutinized in recent days after reports resurfaced that she failed to meet gender eligibility tests of the Women's World Boxing Championships in New Delhi last year. At the time, sporting officials alleged that the boxer failed to an unspecified test because they had male chromosomes. Khalif was born a woman and has always competed as a woman. See, Ocho, look.
But you got me confused now. You got me confused because you said a whole lot of everything, but to me, it's
she was born a woman. She was born a woman.
She was.
Here's the thing. I don't know if you watch it, but when they bring these doctors, because right now there's a lot of transgender people are trying to get right. And when they bring these people to Capitol Hill and these senators and these representatives on the other side, when they ask doctors very specific questions. Doctor, I want to ask you one thing. Can this person that you're talking about, can they have a child? Can this woman have a child? Yes, she can. Does this woman have a period? Yes, she does. So how is she not a woman? Biologically and anatomically, how is she not a woman?
Right.
Now, the problem that I have, this is a very similar situation. I don't know if you followed it.
I haven't. That's why you got me a little confused now.
How about this? There was a young lady from South Africa. Her name was Caster Semenya. She was born a woman.
Right.
But her body produces high levels of testosterone.
Okay.
What they wanted her to do in order to compete against women, they wanted her to take blockers to block it. So you don't want me to take things to help me win,
right?
Which is PEDs, but you want me to ingest something into my body to suppress what God has made me. You said God made everybody always say, Ocho, they say God made you man and woman.
Woman, yes, sir.
Okay. He made her like this. So in order for you to compete, I need you. No, I'm not.
Right.
Every man doesn't have the same level of testosterone. But if he's born with those parts, is he any less of a man? So because if a woman is born with those parts and she produces a higher level of testosterone, does that make her any less of a woman?
Right.
I'm asking, what do you think?
No.
Because for the longest time, can she conceive a child? Does she have a period? That's all.
Yes. That's all that matters.
Simple.
Right.
I don't want to get into all of this and what she chose to identify as.
That's where you're. I'm kind of confused now. She's
not identifying as a woman. God gave her those parts.
So
she got the part. That's the car case. You know, Ocho, you like cars, don't you?
Yes, sir.
You ever watch Meekum? You ever watch Barrett Jackson? They say this car has the original parts.
Right.
The original parts car is worth more.
Right.
This Khalif, those are her original parts. Nothing has been added. Nothing has been taken away.
So Iman Khalif is a woman then?
She's a woman.
Oh, okay. No problem. Because on Twitter, I've been seeing all the clips with the boxer, and they say the person that was in the ring was transgender and was a man.
They said the same thing about Caster Semenya because her body, I think she was born with an extra chromosome, which allows her body to produce more testosterone than the average female body will produce.
Okay.
But guess what, Ocho? She can still, the question that they always ask, and I know you've heard it, can she conceive a child? And does she have a period?
Okay.
Does that not make you female? Right. Does that not make you woman? I thought the ability to reproduce is what separated us. So now it doesn't. I'm just trying to figure out, because her body produces more testosterone, that does not make her any less of a woman if she has and I'm not trying to be graphic, but if she has female parts, she's a woman.
So you heard what Shannon Sharpe had to say there. I want to be crystal clear with the audience. I did not know much of any of this story. I didn't have any of this background information up until this morning, right? So I think it's important that I say that I don't have all the information. I'm not a savant when it comes to discussing these type of things. But nevertheless, it's a sports story. It's an important story. It's getting a lot of attention. And I don't think that we should shy away from controversial topics if we feel like we can lend a voice to it. So you heard what he had to say. According to what he had to say, she's a woman, right? She's a woman. She can have babies and the rest. So if she's a woman, then technically she's within the parameters to compete. Now, if she has more, I think what's the word to use, chromosomes than a normal woman, I hope I'm using the right terminology, then that's a different thing. But she is a woman. He also brought up an interesting point, which is the following. He said, I can understand if you're telling me to take things to enhance my performance, in this case, performance enhancing drugs. But if you're taking things to reduce my performance to level the playing field, he said, then we then have a problem. We then have a problem. Now, this is a very, very tricky situation. I don't live in the States. I haven't lived in the States for a very long time. I will be moving back to the States early next year. But I've kind of been aware of this conversation. This conversation has been taking place in the United States from afar over the last year or two, right? It's not something that I pay much attention to because it's just not on my radar on a day-to-day basis. I don't think about it as much. But I think that when I do come back to the States, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be hearing a lot more about this. But there are a lot of people that are upset at this result, if I'm being honest with you, because the news first came across my desk this morning. What is it? From a New York Post. What is it? From a New York Post Instagram post. And I want to see if I can actually find it. Let me see. New York Post Instagram, because I was reading the comments and people were pretty upset, right? They were upset at this result because I was actually going through the comments. So let me show you. We want to show you what the post said. We're going to put it up for you now. It says, New York Post, sting like a he. Olympic scandal as male testing boxer pummels female in just 46 seconds below the belt. It then says Imani Khalif, an Algerian boxer who failed gender eligibility test in 2023, yet was nonetheless allowed to compete as a woman at this year's Olympics, hit her first round opponent so hard that she had to withdraw. She withdrew in just 46 seconds. Now I want to read some of the comments that people left under the post. It goes, imagine a woman training all her life for these Olympics just to be beaten by a man. Stop this absolute nonsense. Wow. Another person said, he's a man. Just look at his jaw. Another person said, where are all the liberal feminists now? Another person said, all the headlines make you think it's a trans woman, but it's not. It's clickbait. But no one actually reads the story. This is not a trans woman in sports story. It's a chromosome story. Another person said, keep voting for those blue liberal policies, and this is what you get. Trump 2024. Another person said, disqualify him. Not fair. Another person said, Democrats' agenda. So it's a highly contentious matter, but based on the information I have, it's a woman. It's a woman. I guess she just has one more chromosome than, I guess, a normal woman. So it's a woman, right? It's a woman. And therefore, if she is a woman, which according to what I've read, she is, then she should be allowed to compete. She should be allowed to compete. Whether or not you feel like, oh, well, it's not a woman, it's irrelevant. She is a woman, according to what I know. Now, if I'm wrong, then I stand to be corrected, right? I stand to be corrected. If you can present some evidence that says otherwise, then I'll stand up and say, hey, look, I was wrong. Shouldn't have said that. But based on the information that we have, she's a woman, right? So I guess that's the reason ultimately she was allowed to compete, right? I guess that was the reason she was ultimately allowed to compete. On a side note, though, however, are people saying that she shouldn't be able to compete because she has a physical advantage over her opponent, so therefore she shouldn't be allowed to be able to compete, even though she's within the parameters? Because it makes me think, and this is obviously probably most likely different. You know what? Let me not say what I was about to say. I could be wrong. I don't want to go in a totally different direction.